Hello, and welcome back. This is me, your host, the Paulstorian, inviting you to have a listen around because we don't really have anything, so to speak, to see today. This is a bit of Paul story from way in the distant past. I did not have a camera in tow at the time. Now, this goes back to August of 1983. This story. People have always been interested, entertained, something along those lines by this story that happened to me. This is a true story. Uh, what happened was I saw a trailer for a movie during this time, and it was called Metal Storm: The Destruction of Jared's Sin. This was a sci-fi movie, and I was always enjoying sci-fi movies back in those days. 83 would have been the same year I think Return of the Jedi came out. But this was another movie, and this was because it was in 3D. I was excited about this because you could see the stuff coming right at the screen at you. There was a few things back in those days that they tried to put in 3D. It was a little different than the current things. This is 2021 now. The 3D I think has gotten a lot better. I don't usually watch the current stuff, but I know the 3D has improved greatly since the 80s. Um, but this story, anyway, getting back to the story, I was really excited about going to see this movie. And Saturday, this was most likely, the movie came out August 19th, and I believe this was the 20th, so the day after it came out. I was excited about seeing it. So a friend of mine, August 20th, 1983, I believe is when this took place. One friend of mine, a friend of mine named Brian, and I walked. We didn't have cars, and we didn't take our bikes to stay. We just walked to our downtown area, which there was a movie theater down there, but it wasn't the one. There was a second one where the movie theater was playing the Jared Sin movie that I wanted to see, the Metal Storm movie. Anyway, we walked downtown. We were talking, and we went down there for some other reason. We were down there in that area. Well, it was in the afternoon, early afternoon, and I told him I wanted to go see this movie, and he wanted to see it with me too. He said, but he had other things he wanted to do, and to get the matinee, he couldn't run his errands or whatever it was he wanted to do and make it to the matinee showing. He just didn't feel like it. He wanted to go in the evening for the higher price, whereas I thought I wanted to go see the movie when it was cheap. And anyway, what turns out was we were both in the downtown area. I ditched him. I just took off because I wanted to go see the movie. And we were walking. So the quickest path to me to the other movie theater was taking the railroad tracks. So I walked down to the railroad tracks, and I was on a ledge that was probably about, I don't know, 5-6 foot high. I can't remember. It was high off the ground, maybe higher than that. And I saw it was a little ways down to jump. So I thought I'd look down, and I saw it was a big, huge dirt pile down there. I was like, well, I'll just jump in that dirt pile. It'd be nice and soft landing. And then it was right at the edge of the railroad tracks where this dirt pile was. And then I'll walk on the tracks, take the tracks down a ways, and then cut over to the movie theater. It was the quickest way that I thought. So I did. I just jumped off the railroad tie. I don't know. It was like several railroad ties that built up a ledge. I jumped off down to this big, huge pile of dirt. Well, it was so unusual that when I jumped off the pile of dirt, I jumped into the pile of dirt, and then I landed on the pile of dirt, and I jumped out of it to go onto the ground off the pile of dirt, which was, pile of dirt was several feet high in itself. And when I did, I came out, but my shoe stayed in the dirt. Boy, now I'm trying to remember. It might have even been both shoes. Yeah, I think it was. I was. So I jumped into the dirt, both shoes on. I jumped out of the dirt, and my shoes stayed in the dirt, which was very unusual. I thought, whoa, that's different. I was like, well, I'm going to grab my shoes and go to the theater. So I turn around, pulled my shoes out of the dirt. It was like a little hard to get them out. They were stuck in the dirt really good. I was like, boy, this is so strange. And then I got on the railroad tracks and I started walking down towards the closer to the exit where I was going to exit off the tracks, cut over to the theater. And after I had got down maybe a couple of blocks, I was like, what's that smell? And I was looking around and I was like, what is that smell? And I was walking and I was like, man, there's nothing here. What is this smell? And it hit me. I don't think that was a pile of dirt that I jumped in. I looked down at my shoes, got a closer width of my shoes and realized, no, it was a huge pile of manure that I had just jumped in. Now, why somebody dumped a huge, gigantic pile of manure next to the railroad tracks, I don't know. I have no idea. Were they going to fertilize down there? Was somebody just trying to get rid of this, just dumping? I don't know why somebody dumped a dump next to the tracks, but they did. And I ended up jumping into it. So I was like, oh my gosh, I stink. I smell horrible. This smell is everywhere. So I'm like, I was on the railroad tracks. My shoes were full of the manure. Both of them. Yeah, it was both feet for sure. Now I remember. So I wiped my shoe off of this railroad tracks, because railroad tracks, the edge. I wiped my shoes on the edge of the railroad tracks to wipe off as much of the manure as I could. Now, what kind of manure was it? Moo knows. Moo knows. I don't know if it was cow manure, horse manure, or what. Probably cow manure, but I don't know the answer. But anyway, I wiped off as much as I could. From my vantage point where I was a couple blocks away. I could still turn around and see the big, huge pile of manure. But I wiped it off, and I walked farther. I wiped some more off, and I kept wiping it off on the tracks as I was going along. Now the tracks would eventually get rained on and stuff, and later to clear it off. So I don't think anybody had to go and clean the manure off the tracks. It would just clean itself off. But anyway, after going down for a while now, where I was from the movie theater, my buddy and I had walked, a couple of miles to get to downtown, and the movie theater was cutting back the other way, was going to be probably about a mile and a half. So I had over a mile to go with these shoes on that had manure on them. I kept wiping them off, and then finally I got as much off as I could after going quite a ways on the tracks, and I was like, okay, so I kept walking. Finally, I got to the point of the railroad tracks where I could cut over and then head to the movie theater. Well, this was quite a distance, so by the time I got to the theater, if you ever have something on you that smells, or you're around something that smells, after a while, you're going to get used to it, and you won't even smell it anymore. Like, if you go around a farm that you first get there and you can smell the cows and stuff, after you're there for a while, you might just get so used to it, you forget about it. Well, I guess on most circumstances anyway. By the time I did get to the movie theater, I completely forgot that I had that manure on my shoes. It didn't even cross my mind. So anyway, I get there. I paid my discounted matinee price, the cheap price, to get in. I go into the theater, and I sit. I'm not way in the back row, but I'm not too far up. The front row was way up here. Back row's way here. I'm like somewhere in the middle, just a little ways from the back seat. Maybe about 4 rows from the back. This was the only time in my life I've ever seen this happen. But what happened was, while I'm sitting there, and the movie is previews, whatever was going on in 83, it was different back then, but it was early on. It was either the movie had just started or the previews, trailers might have still been going. they didn't have a lot of commercials and stuff. They had like maybe I think even a cartoon back in those days before the movie. But anyway, very early on in the movie, I'm sitting there, like I said, for the first time in my life, the only time in my life I've ever seen this happen. I'm sitting there, every single person in that theater. And although this was a new movie, there wasn't a lot of interest in this, but there was probably about maybe 20, 25 people in the theater, something like that. Uh, every single person, except for me in that theater, got, oh, because they were scattered, sitting all over. They got up and sat in the first three rows. Now, normally in movie theaters, people, unless it's crowded, don't usually sit in the front rows, but they were all scattered all around. And this time when I went in '83, everyone sat in. They moved out of their seats into the first three rows. And when I realized, I'm looking around and I'm realizing, okay, everyone just left. They were sitting there, over there, over there, over there. Everyone, every single person that was in there got up and moved to the first three rows, the front three in the theater. And I'm thinking, boy, this is weird. I was like, why did this happen? And it hit me. Oh, yeah, I stink. That's right. I smell really bad because I have poop on my shoes that I completely forgot about by the time I got there. I forgot I had them on there. And I realized that, okay, they're leaving this because I smell bad and they're trying to get away from me. That's what they're doing. They're not going because they're excited about the 3D effect of this theater. No, they're going there because I smell really bad. When I realized this, I was like, well, let me see what I can do about this. So I got up and went to the bathroom, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try and grab paper towels and as sanitary as I can. I didn't want to touch the stuff. I'm going to try and wet my paper towels, wipe my shoes off as good as I can in the theater, and try and be as sanitary as I can. So while I'm doing this, while I'm in the bathroom, wiping off with paper towels my shoes to get the stink off, two guys come into the bathroom behind me. I can hear them. And one of them says as he's entering the door, man, I gotta go bad. They came in the bathroom and then they said, whew, this bathroom stinks. They turned around and left. They had barely got through the door. They turned around and left. Well, anyway, I finished cleaning my shoes. I went back. I watched the movie. I finished watching the movie. And that day, I went home and I remember I felt so bad because it's like I was thinking in the movie theater and I realized I was aware that nobody wanted to sit by me. And it felt, I don't know, a little awkward, I guess, even for me. But I was like, I wanted to feel better. So I told my buddy Brian, I was like, you know what? I'll go with you to see the movie because he was still planning on going that night. So I said, you know what? I saw it already, but I'm going to go back and see it. So what I did was I took a shower or bath or whatever, got completely cleaned up, changed clothes, got rid of my shoes. They're gone. Put on a whole brand new pair of shoes. And I went back that night with my buddy, paying full price. So not only did I not want to pay the full price in the morning, I paid the full price and the matinee price. I paid for it twice. But when I saw it the second time, I was clean. I didn't stink. I felt pretty good. And I felt better seeing the movie that second time, knowing that I wasn't stinking up the whole theater. And I saw it and got to see it twice in one day. Boy, that's a rare one for me. I don't recall if I've ever paid for a movie twice in one day to see it. Maybe, but doubtful. I might have stayed at the theater and watched the second time, but to pay in one day, yeah, probably have, but not because I stunk. That was the only time I ever saw a movie twice. Once when I stunk and once when I didn't stink in one day. And I just felt so much better the second time. But yeah, I did stink up the theater there, and it was pretty obvious by the crowd that was around me. Anyway, that's a little bit of Paul's story. Don't have any video or pictures of that day, but the story's quite amusing. So I guess the moral of the story is, before you jump into a huge pile of dirt, you might want to smell it first. Thank you for having a look around with your ears for this bit of Paul story. And now it's time for me, your host, the Paulstorian, to X out. Goodbye.